Welcome back, everyone. Wasn't planning to make this video today. Golos Tireless Pilgrim is banned. So we got the September 2021 quarterly update from the Rules Committee, and Golos Tireless Pilgrim has been banned, Worldfire is unbanned, Rule 10 was removed. Rule 10 basically just said that commanders are legends, and that had to do with the time when the legends rule was in flux and wasn't exactly stable, but that change won't impact anything gameplay wise. That was just a clerical thing that they wanted to clear up. But let's talk about these bans and unbans, cause these are a big deal. Golos Tireless Pilgrim is the #1 most popular commander on EDH Rec, and now it's gone. So last week I got into a debate with my Patreons about whether you could build Golos casually or not. And I actually posted that on Twitter, and that post got a ton of feedback. And there's a lot of people on both sides of the argument. Some saying that yes, you can build Golos casually, others saying you can, but realistically no one does. And then finally, the camp that I'm in, which is you can't really build Golos casually. The problem is that if you try to build some fun theme with a Golos deck, if someone else brings their fun theme deck also, Golos is just always going to be better than that commander. The ability to cheat the mana cost and just cast stuff off the top of your library is so incredibly powerful. That's essentially mana ramp and card draw on steroids. Both on your commander, that commander also searches for a land when it comes in, and there are some incredibly powerful lands in the format. Getting the Cabal Coffers combo going really quickly, Field of the Dead, Glacial Chasm, all kinds of really nasty stuff. So the problem is that, like, yes, you bring your fun casual Golos deck, but around turn 7 or turn 8, no other deck at the table can keep up with what you've been doing, because even if you shoot Golos, they just recast it, get another land, and it's not that big of a deal to the deck. It doesn't set it that far back, where most other decks, you have to pay the commander tax and recast it, and every time you have to do that, it slows you down and things just get harder for you. So for me, my argument has been, yes, you can bring your casual Golos deck to the table, but it's never not correct for me to try to hate you off the table as quickly as possible, and to probably try to convince the other two players to do the same thing. There just isn't a time where that isn't strategically the correct thing to do, because Golos just snowballs too quickly. The second they untap with it, they're gonna activate that ability, and you just get buried by that ability. So a while back, I had actually tried to make a very silly Golos deck. It was built around using Springjack Pasture and Gavany Township as the win condition. You make a bunch of goats and then pump them up with +1/+1 counters. And believe it or not, that deck won some games. That's how strong Golos is. Like, that strategy should not work. The few games that I tried with it either came down to I just did everything and it was brutal for my opponents, or they hated me off the table and I did literal nothing. And that's sort of the problem with Golos, is that if you let the Golos player play the game at all, they are probably going to win. Even more so as decks get more and more casual. So the thing that I don't like about Golos is that the correct way for me to play the game is to not let them play the game. More recently, as I'm having pregame discussions about what decks people are playing, if something like Golos comes up, the thing that I'll tell someone is, if you play Golos, I'm gonna have to get one of my really strong decks, because that's the only way to compete, and basically, one of us isn't going to play the game. Either I'm gonna hate you off the table so quickly you don't get to do anything, or I'm gonna stumble and you're just gonna do everything and then no one else at the table gets to do anything. And so I tell people, listen, we're both gonna have a better time if you just play a different commander. If we don't have to get into this whole power dynamic situation of you will just win if left unchecked, then we can both sit back and enjoy the game a little bit more. So yeah, it's the type of thing where I've told people, hey, we're both gonna have a better time if you just play a different deck. I do like what Sheldon had to say about Golos Tireless Pilgrim, both on the Commander webpage and in his SCG article. I'll link to both of those. So he goes on to say, there are many problems with the card, but the greatest is in the low to middle tiers where we focus the ban list. Golos is simply a better choice of leader for all but the most commander-centric decks. Its presence crushes the kind of diversity in commander choice which we want to promote. You can drop Golos and a few 5-color lands into a random deck and get all the ramp and card advantage you would ever want from a commander with no worries about your mana base. Golos' abilities effectively reduces the commander tax to 1, and you hit 7 mana with Golos assuring that you'll have Wooburg and helping you get there quickly. You don't need to do anything else for the rest of the game except cast free spells, something we always want to be careful about. Yeah, free spells are the issue here, right? Like, if it was just a straight card draw commander and you had to actually pay the mana cost for the spells, it'd be, like, mostly fine. There's still some other issues with the land and stuff, but... And this part I found interesting. We've talked to the folks in Studio X, and they understand the problems created by generically powerful 5-color commanders that don't have Wooburg in their mana cost. We don't expect similar cards to come from them in the future, so a Surgical Strike now makes sense. We understand that many players love Golos, so we don't take this action lightly. In the end, the health of the format is our primary concern, and we find Golos unhealthy. While Kenrith the Return King is a similarly flexible and popular commander for good stuff 5-color decks, we see it as a clear step down from Golos. And I would agree with that. Kenrith is very, very good. But Kenrith does run out of cards sometimes. You can commander tax it out of the game. It's still not casting 3 cards for free every turn, even though it is really, really good in all the other things that it does. So yeah, I for one am very happy to see Golos go. Now, it does suck if you were someone that was playing Golos and you have a Golos deck. Losing a card or a deck that you were playing with doesn't feel great, but I think this is one of those things that's kind of about the greater good, that usually the Golos player has fun and the other 3 players don't, because you just can't generate that much value. So I think it's about having some understanding that this is for, like, the long-term health of the format. And beside that, there are plenty of other very good options. If you're doing a cheap big stuff type of deck, Joda still exists. Kenrith the Return King is very good for 5-color good stuff type decks. If you were doing a lands thing, I'm not sure who the best commander is off the top of my head to replace that, especially in 5-color. But there's definitely Windgrace and other types of land decks that have existed for years, so even though it doesn't feel great if you were a Golos player, there are still other good options that exist, so I don't think it's the end of the world. So that's enough on Golos. Let's talk about Worldfire. Worldfire is one that I'm not particularly excited to see. It's a game resetter in red, potentially a win condition. We'll read what Sheldon has to say about it, and then I'll talk about it a little bit. Worldfire was once banned due to the problematic interaction with floating mana and having access to your commander. We want to foster a commander environment where having 8 or 9 mana spells are viable and likely to show up in a game, so we evaluate these expensive ones in that context. Unlike Coalition Victory and Biorhythm, which we continue to believe are problematic in that environment, the level of effort needed to make Worldfire effective is sufficient that we suspect it will not be as much of an issue. There are already cheaper ways to do similar things in the format. We believe the social contract and robust pre-game decisions will keep Worldfire out of games which it doesn't belong. Mixed feelings on that. So people are terrible at the pre-game discussions. They're just awful. Like, there's been so much content made about the pre-game discussion that even though when you have it, you still run into power mismatch all of the time. We're all really bad at it. So be prepared to get Worldfired out of some games, because it's just going to happen. And the big thing here too is that because it's unbanned, everyone's gonna want to try it now. So for like the next 6 months, you're probably gonna run into a ton of Worldfires. But after that, if it is that difficult to achieve, it'll probably taper off. But I was thinking about this a little bit. I don't care for this unban, but running out of Worldfire is still way less effective than a Torment of Hailfire. Like, Torment of Hailfire plus mana and like no creatures in play at all still wins you the game. Worldfire has a lot of ways that it could backfire for the caster, particularly with some of the white spells now. Teferi's Protection, Guardian of Faith, Eerie Interlude, all that type of stuff will protect you from a Worldfire and probably just hand you the win if you're able to cast those in response to the Worldfire. There's some other cute things that you can do. You can use any of the Oblivion Ring style effects and O-ring one of your own creatures, and then when the Worldfire goes off, you'll have a creature in play and no one else will. But the thing that I think I'm most nervous about is Dockside Extortionist. Because with Dockside Extortionist, it's so easy to get that much mana now. That's the thing that I'm really scared about, and like, maybe that's a problem with Dockside Extortionist, and maybe that needs to be evaluated. But Dockside just makes so much mana that the cost of Worldfire, I don't think it's the problem that it once was. But in the sense that there are many more levels of interaction with Worldfire than there are with some of the other I win type spells, maybe it actually isn't that effective. I don't know. I'm gonna have to play it. I've never actually resolved a Worldfire. I was playing when it was legal in the format, but it was banned before I ever had a chance to play it. So at the time before it was banned, like, it just didn't seem like a thing that I really wanted to be doing. Never felt compelled to do that. But once it's gone, you kind of wish you had tested it at some point to have some understanding of it. So will Worldfire break the format? I hope not. I feel like they did at least a little bit of research based on how they talked about it relative to Sway the Stars and Biorhythm, particularly in the SCG article. But the thing that I care about more than anything is that when we unban a card like this, I really want there to be some sort of like system to evaluate that. Let's just suppose for a moment that they're wrong. They have been wrong before. They unbanned Protean Hulk knowing that the Flash Hulk combo was legal, and it literally dominated all of CDH until it was banned. There was not a more efficient win condition in the format at that time. I don't think Worldfire is going to be that. It's a very different type of card, but let's just suppose that it is a problem, it is showing up a lot, and it is just I win because opponents can make enough mana very easily and cast their commander, maybe their commander has haste, all that sort of stuff. So I just want the rules committee to have a system in place to evaluate these unbans. I don't know if they do or if they don't, or what kind of things they talk about behind closed doors, but let's say that we get like 3 months or 6 months out from this ban. I would definitely like them to have some conversation about it, at least behind closed doors, about, okay, is this going as we expected? Or is it not? Do we need to make another change? I care more about that discussion and that system being in place more so than the unban itself. Like, the unban itself could go either way. It might be fine, it might not be fine, I don't know. But I really just want them to be able to evaluate unbans like this in case they do cause problems, in case there is another Flash Hulk. That's basically what I'm trying to avoid. But I do think one of the things that's going to keep Worldfire in check, amongst a myriad of other things that exist in the format, is white protection spells. They've gotten really good over the past 4 or 5 years. If someone has a Teferi's protection, it's just way too risky to drop a Worldfire, because you're probably going to hand them the game. And here's a few cards that weren't printed yet when Worldfire was legal. Teferi's Protection, Eerie Interlude, Guardian of Faith. There's also a lot more redundancy in the Otherworldly Journey, Long Journey Home type of effects, so even just blinking one of those creatures out until the end of the turn is probably good enough to win the game. So there's just a lot more effects in the game to be able to counteract that type of play. The other thing you have to watch out for too is just the green deck could have a Forest and a Mana Dork. That's a thing that could happen, and they might just win the game if no one else can get to a creature first. So if you guys have never played Armageddon, Armageddon is a super risky card, and there are so many ways for it to backfire. Worldfire is in that similar vein. There's a lot of ways that it could go wrong. It's not just pumping 30 mana into a Torment of Hellfire. It's not an Expropriate. Those are fairly safe bets, and if they don't work, they don't just kill you, which is a big difference with Worldfire. So who knows? We'll see. I do think that I'm going to jam Worldfire into a bunch of red decks early on here, just to get a feel for it until we figure out, all right, maybe it isn't that good, or maybe it is a little crazy. We'll see. Chances are it's probably somewhere in the middle. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, feel free to comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you for watching. After filming the video, I learned that the emblem from Chandra Awakened Inferno plus a Worldfire will basically wrap the game up for you real neatly. So if you see someone dropping Chandra emblems, you better take them out of the game really quickly before they can find that Worldfire, or you better be sitting on a Teferi's Protection or a Counterspell, because things are probably going to be really bad if you don't. I want to thank my awesome Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. If you want to help support the channel and vote on which decks I play next, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below. Help support me and save 15% on singles by using the promo code REPLAY at mothershipaTX.com. Commander Replay t-shirts, available in orange and colors beside orange.